So when we find out that someone is having a baby, what is the very first question we ask? Boy or girl? And it's this knowledge of the sex of a baby pre-birth that will set a child on a specific gender path. A gender path that will determine so much of how their lives unfold. We're all conditioned to seeing the world through this lens, pink, blue, girl, boy. Often it takes something unusual for us to change our perception. In 2005, I had my one and only child. And at 16 weeks, my husband and I found out the sex, and we were thrilled to learn that we were having a girl. Of course, we would have been absolutely fine either way, boy or girl. But somehow, being a woman myself, I felt more comfortable with the idea that I was having a girl. I thought, I'll be able to relate to her, she'll be able to relate to me. Well, from the time that my daughter, Gabby, could walk and talk, she did not subscribe to any preconceived ideas of girliness. In fact, she didn't want to be anything like me. She wanted to be more like my husband. And my husband is a carpenter, and so when Gabby was really little, she asked for a real tool belt. She had to be a real one. It couldn't have been a toy one. When she would wake up in the morning to go to pre-K, she would say, "What's Daddy wearing?" Because she wanted to dress exactly like him. So invariably, when we would go shopping, there was nothing she liked in girls' departments. And so instead, we would wander through the boy aisles looking for everything from clothing to toys. So girls' t-shirts typically consisted of pastel colors with images of things like butterflies and cupcakes, while boys got the primary colors with images of things like sports graphics or dinosaurs or rock bands. Well, Gabby liked superheroes, not Barbies. She preferred pirates to princesses. Often we would get funny looks as we wandered through the boy aisles looking for things like Star Wars merchandise. And sometimes I would hear a mother saying to her daughter, "Oh, no, honey, you can't go over there. That's just for boys." Or a parent telling their son he wasn't allowed to look at the dolls because dolls are just for girls, and my heart would just break. Gabby loved superheroes. When she was 3, she was Spider-Man for Halloween. When she was 4, she was Batman. And when she was 5, she was Indiana Jones. She was fiercely strong-willed at the ripe old age of 3. As her mother, I could see that her personal identity was tremendously important to her. But it was equally important that my husband and I allow her to be whoever she wanted to be. But I'll be honest, that's not always as easy as it sounds, right? We all say to our kids, "You can be anything you want to be." But do we really mean it? Do we really allow them to make their own choices about who they want to be? Or do we limit those choices based on whether they are a girl or a boy? So when Gabby was 7, she asked for a buzz cut. And she already had short hair. And one day she said to me, "Mom, if boys can have a buzz cut, why can't girls?" And there was nothing I could say to that. She was absolutely right. It was her hair. It was her choice. I did say to her, "Gabby, if you buzz your hair, I just want you to know people might look at you funny. Kids can be mean. They might say things to you. Are you okay with that?" She told me she was fine with it. So off we went to the hairdresser, buzzed her hair off. She looked adorable. She was all smiles. She could not have been happier. And I knew right at that moment that allowing her to walk out into the world how she wanted to walk out into the world was what mattered. Not instilling my vision or society's vision of who she should be, but by allowing her to be true to her truest self. Shortly after she got her buzz cut, we were at a local community pool that we belonged to, and a woman I had been introduced to, who had a couple kids running around, came up to me and said, "Is that your daughter running around with the buzz cut and the board shorts?" And I told her it was. And she said, I think it's great that you let her cut her hair like that." And then she proceeded to tell me a story about when she was a little girl She had two brothers, and she dressed just like them, she played with them, and she loved being like them. She said the first day of school came around, and her mother, she dressed like her brothers, and her mother made her change into what she said was a stiff, lacy dress. And she looked at me really sadly, and she said, I can still feel that lace scratching on my skin. It just made me realize the tremendous impact we have as parents on our kids. So the idea that all girls want to be princess or are somehow hardwired to all things pink was a myth. It was being proven wrong right in front of my eyes. I started to do some research, and I discovered, lo and behold, that pink was not always a girl's color. According to a great article in Smithsonian Magazine called When Did Girls Start Wearing Pink? And actually in the late 19th century, blue was seen as a more feminine color, and more girls wore it. And pink was seen as a variation of red, which was more masculine. It actually wasn't until the 1940s when companies began to get a hold of color and use it in that way by gender. And it actually exploded in the late 90s, early 2000s, when pink and princess became even bigger for girls. And now companies like Disney inundate girls, especially, with all things pink and princess from birth. It's a $5 billion industry for them. So we did take Gabby to Disney World when she was little, and she had her short hair and her shorts, and we walked up to the hotel counter at Disney World, and the woman behind the counter was lovely, and she looked over at Gabby, and she looked at me, and she said, oh, and is this your little prince? And I said, no, and she's not a princess either. And the woman looked really confused. She didn't know what to do with that. Shouldn't there be a lot more options between prince and princess? John F. Kennedy said, conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. Conformity leads to stereotypes. Stereotypes lead to limitations. And yet, we as a society punish those who are different and who don't conform, right? It seems we've lost that in-betweenness to allow children the space to explore their own unique identities. We see this intolerance in the media incessantly, right? A girl who cuts her hair short or wears boy clothing or likes things like Star Wars, or a little boy who paints his nails, wants to wear the color pink, or grows his hair long, are all victims of intense media scrutiny, right? Socially, these kids can experience bullying, or sometimes it's actually the opposite. Sometimes kids who step outside gender lines are viewed as courageous. But I don't believe that kids should have to be brave to be who they are. But as parents, we have to be, because kids are bombarded every single day with images, product, and advertising and language that look to trap them and put them in boxes. Take a look at these two magazine covers of Girls' Life and Boys' Life magazines. These were, this picture of these two magazines side by side were taken in a library last year. And while they're not published by the same company, they highlight some very real and disturbing differences in how we view girls and boys and what each is exposed to. So for girls, it's all about fashion and how we look, how to wake up pretty, or your dream hair. For boys, it's all about action and doing. Explore your future. Astronaut, artist, firefighter, chef, here's how to be what you want to be. When I saw these two magazine covers, my head just about exploded. And though I was really angry, I wasn't shocked. I'd already seen books that taught girls how to be more gorgeous and fabulous, and boys how to be clever and smarter. Years ago, I wrote a blog post about these two rattles. One is for girls and one is for boys. I'm sure you can tell the difference. The one for girls says for a sweet baby girl, it's pink and purple. It's in the shape of a diamond ring. And the one for boys says for a busy baby boy, it's blue and yellow. It's in the shape of a hammer. Because eventually boys will learn that they have to do the hard work so they can afford to put that diamond ring on a girl's finger. It's the truth. But I ask you, why do rattles need to be gendered, right? It may seem innocuous, right? You may be sitting there thinking, they're just babies. You buy them, they don't know what they're looking at. But the reality is that these stereotypes set in and attach themselves like a second skin that will follow a child all the way through adulthood. Rattles are just the beginning of an endless stream of images they will be exposed to. Dr. Lisa Elliott is author of a wonderful book called Pink Brain, Blue Brain. She says, quote, "Gender is the first, most obvious, and most significant attribute each of us shows the world, and infants understand much more about gender than we ever used to give them credit for." End quote. We put bows on female babies' heads who have no hair, so they'll immediately be identified as girls, and little baby boys might wear a onesie that says little man. I grew up in the 70s and 80s when product and advertising, especially for kids, reflected a kind of freedom for them to be able to explore. If you see these ads, these are Lego ads actually from the early 80s. You can see there's not a lot of pink. Kids aren't separated, boy and girl in the same ad, playing with the same toy. A little girl in blue jeans with a blue shirt. The text addresses them as children, not as boy and girl. You'd be hard-pressed to find ads like this today. Now, Lego makes what's called Lego Friends. It's a separate line of building toys just for girls. And I can tell you that separate is not equal here. There's quite a difference. So I grew up with two brothers right here in North Utica. We all had one big wheel. It was red, yellow, and blue. I think probably many of you will remember it. But now they make one for girls as well. So basically, companies convince parents and kids, right, that girls need to have a pink version of everything, while boys are not allowed to like the color pink. And voila, they have twice the profit. We all buy into this notion, even as adults. I don't know if you saw that Bic makes pens for women. They're pink, and they have some kind of special grip, because we have special hands, I guess. Truth be told, though, things are beginning to shift, and I notice this all the time. It's not enough, but things are beginning to shift. For instance, in 2015, the huge retail giant Target actually announced they were going to be removing their gender identifiers from their toy aisles. And believe it or not, this was seen as huge news. So basically, it wasn't going to say girls building toys anymore and boys building toys. It was just going to say building toys. And the move was met with some hearty approval, but also some very heavy disapproval, as some wondered, why was Target making it harder for them to find stuff for their kids? And why couldn't Target just let girls be girls and boys be boys? But more and more, we do see the idea of gender nonconformity being rewarded and appreciated. Indeed, time takes persistence, hard work. So my daughter is now 12, and she is in 7th grade, and she plays baseball. She does not play softball, and she doesn't want to play softball. She's been playing since she was 4. She is a really good player. She puts in the hard work. She's on a middle school team, and she's on her local travel team as the only girl. Do I know how far she's going to go? No. Am I going to tell her that she can't keep playing? No. I see her and children like her as a natural-born leader, someone who is breaking down barriers without even knowing that she's doing it, just by going out into the world as she is. Don't we need and want more kids like this? So I ask you, what would happen if we didn't place limits on children based on their gender? Wouldn't it be amazing to say to our kids, you can be anything you want to be, and mean it. This is what we can teach our kids, not to let arbitrary boundaries limit them. We have the capability as parents to open up their worlds so that they truly have endless opportunities from which to choose. And isn't that what we all want for our kids? Thank you.